morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Behind the Fiends. No longer Fiend Zone video, no longer behind the counter. It's just Behind the Fiends. Hope you like the new intro. Been working all morning on it. Today, I am joined by Bruce Vilanch. He is, to me, when you look at his IMDb and everything that he's done, massive talent, just massive amount of work that he's done, from the Academy Awards, Grammys, Hollywood Squares, even the infamous Star Wars Holiday Special, and one of my personal favorite movies, The Ice Pirates, which I get not a lot of people have seen, and if they have, maybe it's not their cup of tea. I like it, so it's my prerogative. But without any further ado, I am going to bring in Mr. Bruce Vilanch. Aloha,
Here
Bruce.
I am, Rebel Scum at your service.
You were telling me before we started recording, you used to wander the streets of our fair island.
I love Oahu. I love Hawaii. I go as often as I can. I live in California, so I hop over. I'm crazy about it, and I know you are in Waipahu, and I was singing you my song. I'm a Mahu from Waipahu, which is actually it's part of a bigger joke. I was doing. I think I appeared at a club there. I've done a bunch of benefits over there, and I said I was learning the directions, Avon, Diamond Head, and Mackay and Mauka and all of that, and I said I was walking down the street, and I said I have these. I asked this person, I didn't know where I was going. I said I have these instructions. I've been told to go Mahu on Kalakaua. And she said, "You are."
For those of you out there that are
It's
from
a
the
Hawaiian
mainland,
joke. I know we've lost the other 50, the other 49. Yeah. I count Puerto Rico. We've lost the other 50.
So those that don't know what Mahu means, it is basically it's a transgender woman.
It's a gay person.
Yes.
Well, I guess it could be a trans. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it started just being trans. I mean, it could be like a Kama Aina thing, an old Hawaiian thing. Because the more you study about Hawaii, the more you discover that they had the whole religion was so rich with things, and with tolerance and forbearance for all kinds of people, just within this little group of people on an island. Yep. They recognized they were all types and they all had to live together. That's kind of like what the Aloha Spirit is supposed to be, I guess.
I guess that's what the rest of the United States is supposed to be.
It kind of lives, unless you are on the H1 during rush hour, but in which case there's no aloha.
No, but in my outside of this podcasting, that's what I work at a body shop. So that type of lack of aloha spirit gets me paid.
You get to see the physical evidence of no aloha.
Yeah. Try taking a little island, and putting people from different parts of the world who have different driving styles all together. And if you are a good body man, you will make a killing. It's
absolutely, provided you can get the parts from the mainland.
Yeah, which we've had trouble
coming
with
into
lately.
The mainland next week. Yeah, we'll have it here in a few days.
So, Bruce, a little bit about you. What got you into writing and wanting to be in show business?
Well, I've always wanted to be in show business. I was a child actor. I made faces in front of the mirror, and my parents enabled that. They thought, "Oh, that's a good idea. He's happy when he's doing that, so let's encourage it." And they always encouraged me. And I was never a child star, or we'd be having this conversation in rehab. I was always, I did commercials and stage things, and they weren't living off of me. It wasn't like I wasn't like Britney, where the whole family was living off of me. Everything went into Bruce's college fund, and but my mother was she was kind of a showgirl, and she was sort of starstruck, and my father, I think, partially married her because she had that sort of glamour quotient, and And they just got a kick out of it. But they always wanted me to be able to make a living, so they encouraged me to write because they said, newspapers will never die. Who knew? So they encouraged me to do that. So I was always writing and acting and acting and writing. And at a certain point, I was I was getting older. I was like an adolescent, and I was heavy, and I had a deep voice, and I looked 40, but I was not. I was reading. I auditioned opposite people who were the actual age, so I really wasn't getting cast. I started writing seriously, and this I guess was in high school. And when I got out, I went to college and took a degree in journalism and theater, so I could juggle these things. So it's always been there. When I got out of college, I got a job on the Chicago Tribune, and I met Bette Midler, who was just starting out, a Hawaiian, a legendary wahine, and I began writing for her, and it's been half a century. Excuse me, I had to let the digitalis kick in. And so, it just kind of happened. But, there was never any. My father was a doctor, and they had fond hopes I would become one. But our joke was he doesn't have the patience. And I didn't. I just, it was always what I wanted to do. I was lucky. I knew right away, and I got to do it.
So Bette Midler was kind of your gateway, right, into.
Yes, she was my gateway drug. Well, I was writing for a couple of people before because I was on the Trib, and I was writing a column. I was writing features. I was writing human interest kind of stuff and a lot of show business stuff. And so I met a lot of people, and they asked me to write for them. And but I saw her, and I asked her. I mean, I suggested that she could use material, and she said, "Got any lines?" And that was the beginning. So yeah, through her. I mean, then I got known through her. And after 5 years of that, I came out to Hollywood to do a TV show and never looked back, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
Chicago. Sun sets in October and comes up in April.
Yeah, you ain't felt cold until you felt that wind in Chicago.
Oh, God.
It just cuts right through you.
That's right.
Literally.
Well, that's the hawk walking down Michigan Avenue.
Just freeze.
Comes at you, grabs you.
The infamous Star Wars Christmas special, was that like one of your first projects that you worked on?
It wasn't. It was about 3 years in to my Hollywood run, and but it was. I always say this always pisses people off, but Star Wars had been out the summer before, and it was a phenomenon. But it was, nobody knew if it was a one-hit wonder or not, and it was not regarded as a great work of cinematic art at the time. And it was a summer picture and it was borrowed a lot from the Old Republic Studios Saturday morning serials, and people had a lighthearted approach to it. It had not yet become the Scientology of the nerds, which it became canonized. And so George took an opportunity to stir the pot, and he sold CBS one of the 10 stories he had that he had written already, and 6 of which were going to be movies, and the other 4 he distributed amongst the people. And this was one, and the idea was just to keep Star Wars on the bubble because he was about to start shooting The Empire Strikes Back. And I don't think if George knew 2 things. I don't think if George knew that what television variety specials were like in those days, he would have sold the thing. I don't think he ever envisioned a show with his characters and Art Carney, B. Arthur, Harvey Korman, Diane Carroll, Jefferson Starship, Cirque du Soleil mingling. I don't think he ever really had that. And I also don't think that if he thought he was selling them an original musical, that he would have sold them a show where the lead characters are Wookiees. They don't sing, they don't dance, they don't speak in any known language. They sound like fat people having orgasms. Trust me, I know.
That's why I love that freaking movie or that show so much.
And so I don't think he was aware of any of that. Once he got hip to it, he stepped away from the vehicle. He went back up to Marin and concentrated on the Empire. And he would occasionally we would get a call from on high, generally saying, "I understand you're going to do this. Please don't do that." And the other thing I have to point out is that it was the 70s, and as has been noted elsewhere, if you remember the 70s, you weren't there. I mean, we were all kind of half-baked, and I say that with an abundance of caution because I've said it so often on podcasts and places. I get things back saying, Vilanch, who admits to copious drug abuse. No, we lit a doob. I mean, I embroider. I joke. I say the Carrie and I were snorting the sweet and low. But in fact, was we were all kind of, we all kind of had a buzz all the time. And the older ones, were drinkers, so that fit right in. But it wasn't like we were out of our mind running up. It wasn't reefer madness. But it did inform everything we did. And look at what we were doing. I mean, look at this fakakta combination we were handed to do this Star Wars story with these ridiculous characters who are not performance characters and add performance to it to make a television show. So in retrospect, I mean, it looked, what happened was George then made the 3 movies, and then a generation came along that watched those movies on DVDs, VHS, and whatnot. And then the internet came along, and the internet discovered the Star Wars holiday special, which had come and gone on one night in November. And there was a whole generation of people who saw this thing on the internet and said, George, how could you betray us? Because by then it was already a religion. And George got terrified because he was being assaulted by people. And so he tried to burn every copy and, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, it died down. And then he made 3 more pictures. He came back at it. And every time he makes one, he's made 4 more after that. Every time he makes a picture, the thing bubbles up to the surface to the point where I'm now writing a book about how I wrote that show and the worst shows in television history and lived. And it's called It Seemed Like a Bad Idea at the Time. But I mean, and that's why I'm on the show talking to you about it. I mean,
but I don't. Here's the thing with me: I don't hate it. I don't. I mean, I get. I mean, isn't that the spirit of movies and television is to get joy from what you're watching? When I watch
of course, yeah.
Yes, I get it. It's Star Wars, and I'm not necessarily supposed to be rolling on the floor with belly laughs, but
there are a lot of very serious people out there, and especially about that. I mean, because it has been canonized. I mean, it's to some people it's a way of life. There are all the Star Wars conventions, and May the 4th be with you on May 4th, and all of that. And George has even kind of done a half-assed ownership of it. When he sold it, he sold the Star Wars a Star Wars holiday special to Lego, who did it for Disney Plus as part of his overall deal. Disney owns Lucas now, and so they did the Lego thing where they had Lego characters. I mean, they had Daisy Ridley, who looked just like Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, it's the strangest Lego I've ever seen, and they're all celebrating Life Day, which was the holiday that he invented for the holiday special, and that he thought would catch on like Festivus for the rest of us. But of course, it didn't. And but he's determined that it's going to be something, so he brought it back. And at the same time, well, I mean, just all of it sort of it's come back. It's kind of all come back to haunt him. And he just doesn't let go of it.
Yeah, because I know for a long time, from what I read, because I didn't actually discover it, and I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan, and I was over at a buddy's house. I was still in the military at the time, and I went over. I think it was a New Year's Eve of 2013, maybe 2012. But anyway, he goes into his room, and it's like he went in there like Indiana Jones with the freaking Ark of the Covenant, and like opens it up, and you got that music. Whoa, whoa, and he brings out this VHS tape, in this ratty cover, and he's just got the little, the little sticker on the back, and it says Star Wars Holiday Special, and I'm like, what
That's
is
my
this?
baby.
And I'm like, what is this? And he
That's
puts
the
it
one.
on, and we just die laughing. I think the funniest part to me was the grandpa Wookie watching the porn or whatever it was.
That gets commented on a lot, and I had to go back writing this book. I of course looked at the show a lot, but when I looked at that, I thought to myself, they're absolutely right. It's totally lurid. I don't know how we got away with it. I think we got away with it because it was Diane Carroll, and she was so classy and so elegant, and she made it all seem kind of innocent. I mean, it was originally going to be Cher, and Cher dropped out shortly before we shot the thing, and Bob Mackie had this costume which happened to fit Diane Carroll. So, and Diane was a great choice, but we always, when we were doing it, I said to her, this is the first example of interracial, interspecies flirtation on network television. We should get our NAACP Image Award for this. We've broken ground, and it was a running gag all the way up to the end of her life. Whenever I would see her, I would say, "Have you heard from the NAACP yet? Have they sent you the trophy?" No, no, we have been egregiously overlooked. But and I always, for years I harbored that's the other thing. I mean, if I thought that 40 years later we would be talking about this, we all would have paid closer attention. I mean, but it was one of those things. It was totally disposable. It was on. It was gone. Who knew?
Yeah,
But
I mean, you were a
but
young
here
writer at
it
the
is,
time.
and I do have to I do have to say I'm kind of stunned when I look at it, because it's pretty clear what's going on. This silverback Wookie is having this kind of Jo fantasy, and 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 there she is. But I think with a less exquisite performer, we might have had trouble. I mean, we were a little ahead of the Madonna curve, but because if somebody who was known for shock things did it, it would have automatically set off alarms. But because it was just such a classic individual, we sailed through. Let the be listening to you pornographers out there. This is how you do it. You know,
Well, I mean, at the time
get
you were a
somebody who's
young,
revered. Get Michelle Obama. Get somebody who the public loves, and you'll get away with everything.
but I mean, at the time you were a young writer, so it was a job to you. I mean, of course, I would
Yeah, it
think.
was a job. It was a job. I wrote a lot of that kind of crap. Wayne Newton Wayne Newton at SeaWorld.
Yeah.
Wayne singing to Shamu. I mean, I wrote a lot of the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, and Donnie and Marie. I wrote a lot of that stuff. That was the work that I got when I got out there. Mainly because I went out there. My reputation was Bette Midler, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Joan Rivers, and a show with the Manhattan Transfer, which was a group that Bette helped start, and we had a limited series on CBS, a summer show, and it was considered very hip. And people can say, "Oh well, you're funny, but you're very too sophisticated for what we're doing." And I realized I was going to starve, so I started doing this stuff that was fun, but nobody would ever confuse it with sophisticated work. And now I'm reaping the rewards in my dotage. There you go.
So you weren't brought back for the Ewok special, were you? The Battle of Endor.
No, that was like real. That was like kind of a faux movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
No.
was a made for television movie, actually.
But it was pretty high end, as I recall. I mean, one of the problems for everybody with the Star Wars show was that it looked so cheesy compared to the movies. Well, of course, we didn't go to London and build sets and all that. We shot the whole thing on the studio at Warner Brothers on a soundstage, and everything. And it was pre CGI. It was all that. Just everything looked as cheap as it could look.
I
I
mean,
mean, we
yeah,
thought it looked great compared, but we were not putting it side by side with the movie, which of course you can do now. You can share a screen with the movie and the special, and you can see how cheese bomb the special looks.
Well, I mean, yeah, you look back at it now and you say that, but when I still watch it today, it's like, okay, well, this came out at the end of the 70s, almost the 80s. And for television, which let's be real, didn't have the kind of effects that you all had with the costume design and everything like that.
Yeah.
It was like 10 or 15 years ahead of its time when it came to that stuff.
Could be. Thank you for saying that.
I will carry the banner. I'll be the only soldier in the Star Wars Holiday Special Army. I mean, like I said, I'll never say it's perfect, but I enjoy it. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And hey guys, you wouldn't have got Boba Fett if it hadn't been for Bruce and them.
Well, that was the other thing I neglected to mention. I had a little brain fart. I meant to talk, which has the same initials as Boba Fett. Boba Fett is the thing that actually lives from the show, and that was a character that George, of course, came up with, and he wanted to do an animated feature, but he could not get financing for it. So he went to Canada, and he had this 10-minute thing, which is almost like a sizzle reel, like a presentation for a bigger enterprise. And we inserted it into the show. It was, I think it was something that Lumpy, the kid, the child Wookie, was watching on his portable video player, which of course in those days, I don't know if there were any yet in those days, or if we really had peered into the future. But and Boba Fett lives now. Boba Fett has his own series on Disney Plus. So that, if there's anything, I guess it's kind of like, some I don't know what to compare it to. It's like if Hitler had a kid who turned into a real statesman. I mean, that's all. The only thing it's like if some awful person wound up having a child that became a great person.
Guys, all I'm going to say is Bruce will accept your apologies and thank yous for his work on giving you Boba Fett.
Oh my, yes.
He said, yes, worship upon me, praise me.
I need a cat in my lap. But
I gave you the Fett.
$1 million.
Another movie that I loved as a kid, and it was mainly because of the humor of it. And I understand there's so many people that don't get it. Like, I watched a review just to kind of refresh my brain on the movie, and I watched this young kid did a review on it. Ice Pirates is what I'm referencing.
Yes.
And he's like,
he didn't like space herpes.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't get the humor. And I'm like, it's because it was the 80s and you weren't even thought of yet, and of course.
Well, it was also it was a lot of it was a spoof, but not a spoof. The irony is, Spaceballs. After we finished shooting at Metro, Spaceballs was the next movie that came in, and Mel used some of our sets because he saved some money that way. And so you'll see, if you ever look at Spaceballs, you'll see that looks familiar. It's the same spaceship from the Ice Pirates. Because Spaceballs was obviously a dead-on parody of Star Wars and space movies, and we were sort of a half-assed thing. We were actually an adventure with comic overtones to it. It was neither here nor there. And whenever you do anything like that, it falls into two camps. The comedy audience goes, well, what was all that shit with the guns, and the other audience goes, well, what was all that shit with the guys making jokes and space herpes and things like that, I mean, were these monsters real or were they not real? What the hell? So you fall between, you should pardon the expression, two stools, and that was that. But when it came out, it was kind of like a half-assed hit. I mean, it actually did business, and MGM certainly made a lot of money on it, and it cost a whole lot less than Spaceballs.
Yeah, because
they made a lot of money on that too.
Initially, it was supposed to be a kind of a serious sci-fi movie in the vein of like a Star Wars, and then I guess the studio wanted it to be a comedy.
As it developed. Well, it started as Yeah, as a serious action movie, and MGM had a television division, and they had a deal with Robert Urich, with Bob Urich, and they produced a bunch of TV series with him. Vegas was the first one, and it was a big hit, and they made him a deal. They later did Spencer for Hire, which was a series with him. But as part of his deal, he got movies, a guarantee of so many movies. And they began developing movies for him. And Ice Pirates had been sitting there as a kind of a Star Wars a Star Wars Raiders kind of movie, with envisioning with Harrison Ford in the lead and all that. And they developed it for Bob. And Bob had a real twinkle in his eye, and he wanted it to be something more than just a shoot 'em up sci-fi picture. So it began getting a comedic makeover, and I was brought in to do a rewrite. And we were making it more of a comedy. And the character of Weird Wendon, the evil emperor who had gambled away his body and was a head moving from, was originally going to be played by Paul Williams, and then he got something bigger and dropped out. And we were right about to start production, and so the producer of the movie, John Foreman, said to me, "Okay, we haven't got time to recast this. You're playing it." So I said, "Fine, great, I love it. I'll rewrite a little bit of it." And he said he got the rewrite. He said, "We didn't see him coming in on page 3. Back off." So we then started shooting the thing. What happened was, it's a long, ridiculous story, but right before we started, we were still in development, and the head of MGM got fired. And our producer was made head of MGM. He immediately greenlit the movie, and we went into production. During production, he was fired as head of MGM. He went back to being the producer of the movie, and of course, the new guy cut a week out of the production budget. That's why there's the whole thing. We invented the time warp to cover what we couldn't shoot. So it got more and more ridiculous as we were going on. But one of the reasons why it lived after its initial release was Angelica Houston. And Angelica, this was her second picture. She made one movie which her father, John Huston, directed. It was a bad picture that she made with Asaf Dayan, who was Moshe Dayan's son, who was an Israeli actor. It was a medieval romance, and it was a turd. And this was her second movie. And her third picture was Pritzi's Honor, which her father directed. And her father said, "I don't think she can handle it." And then he looked at the Ice Pirates, where she played this fierce Amazonian, and he said, "Oh, she's so strong. Who knew?" Fathers don't pay attention. So he cast her, and she won the Oscar. Well, when she won the Oscar, and she was also Jack Nicholson's girlfriend at the time, they were living together for years. She became a big personality, and they said, "We have to show all of her movies." Well, she had 3 movies, and Ice Pirates was, one of them. And they showed Ice Pirates on TV over and over. Ted Turner loved Ice Pirates, and he put it on all of his stations, TBS, TNT, you name it. You couldn't escape it. And Angelica, to this day, says to me, no matter where I go, the first question is, "Tell us about Ice Pirates." She said, "Because they're all your age, right? People who interview her. And they all watched it as kids, and they all want to know." She says, "Doesn't matter what else I've done, I cannot escape that piece of shit. Why is that?" So I said, it's your cross to bear, Angelica. Just live with it. That's all.
Because it's a cult favorite. It
It
has
is
a
a cult favorite. I said, you have to own it. And, now she really does own it. I mean, Ron Perlman doesn't own it. Ron Perlman, who was one of the space crew, and later became, Beauty and the Beast on TV, and then Sons of Anarchy, and a lot of Hellraiser, all these great things he's done. The great in the science fiction action realm, and they asked him about Ice Pirates, and he says, "It was awful. I hated it. I won't talk about it." and in his book, he like dismisses it as like, I can't believe I got dragged into this thing. It was for the money. I had a new kid and I had to save some money. Anyway, he's a great guy, but it's just funny because I guess when people have serious careers, they have a thing like that, they would just assume not to discuss it. I, who have not had a serious career, I'm delighted to talk about it. I can't talk about it.
Yeah, it's almost like they're ashamed to look at what brought them to the dance. You know?
Well, first of all, they're actors, and they are terminally insecure. All actors are, because they never know exactly what their success is based on, and uh, so that's part of it. I mean, that's a real generalization, but it pretty much does hold water. But and also they feel like they've done so much other stuff that's really, in their eyes, worthwhile. That why are people focusing on this? But you have to have a sense of humor about your life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just make yourself crazy.
Don't I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying. Don't take everything
Yeah,
so serious. I do a lot of dabbling in the indie film side of things where it's, actors that aren't SAG and all that. They're normally
yeah,
college kids and all this other
sure.
stuff, and they're hungry, trying to kick the door open to get
Right.
to that next level. So I haven't had the experience of the insecurity and the ego and different things
Yeah.
like that.
Well, there's always something shooting in Hawaii. That's the funny thing. It's like when they built that studio for the original 50, uh, they keep getting, there's always a show. I mean, now there's Magnum and NCIS Hawaii. So people keep getting work, locals keep getting work, and that's a perfect entree because you really see how the business works. I mean, when you've
Yeah,
survived some of those things.
and I
And
want it to grow because I mean it's better for all of you. I mean, it's better for everybody that works in film.
yeah, I mean, Amy Hill, who's a friend of mine, is on Magnum, and she lived here for years and went back to Hawaii to do it. And she's at the happiest thing on the planet because she gets to work at home with what she loves. But a lot of people get their entree into the real world of movies and television through those shows over there. So those are the people you're talking about get to see all that. But it's a small it's a small island.
Now, Robert Urich, before, I mean, sadly, he's no longer with us, but he seemed to claim the movie, didn't he? Or did he kind of like,
He had the picture was a success. I mean, he had some real. There was a picture he made where dead cows were falling out of the sky. I can't think of the name of it. It was they thought there were aliens, but it turned out to be secret government tests being done. I can't remember the name of it, but that was part of it. He did a couple of movies. He didn't become a movie star, even though, and this was not a big enough hit for him to become a movie star. Uh, he went back to television actually with Spencer. Uh, so so in other words, he had bigger embarrassments than the Ice Pirates. He had a couple of pilots that didn't make it also. Well, he was very well compensated for all of that. He was a lovely, sweet guy. I knew him in Chicago when I first started out. He was a Chicago actor, he and his wife, Heather. And he was in a play. He was in a play with Ann Southern, who was a big TV star, and Burt Reynolds at this. There was a theater in Chicago, and that produced its own stuff. And Burt Reynolds was coming to do the next production, and he saw Bob in this production, and he thought he was terrific, and he cast him in. Burt was doing the Rainmaker, which was uh, a 50s play. Anyway, he got him out to Hollywood, and he set him up in the business. So he was somebody I knew from the beginning, and it was a happy coincidence that we wound up doing the Ice Pirates. But he was the sweetest guy, and she was sweet, and his son is an actor, and he's sweet too. It runs in
yeah,
the family.
Ice? I remember always watching Spencer for Hire, and Spencer wasn't my favorite character. My character was probably like everybody else's was Hawk, Avery Brooks.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. He was
All
a
you
real
Star
action.
Trek nerds, Captain Benjamin Sisko. Um, but Robert Urich and Michael Roberts had a great chemistry in that
Yeah,
movie. I thought they played
yeah,
off of each other well.
they did very well, and yeah, and Michael, of course, had worked with Robert Blake on Beretta, and so he was used to dealing with weirdly temperamental stars. And Bob was exactly the opposite. He was just, let's have fun, let's just do this and have a good time. And so they dove into it. And Mary Crosby, who was Bing Crosby's daughter, and had been on Dallas, which was huge. And in fact, I think she shot JR, I think, which was like the big, it was a
Mm-hmm.
huge pop culture thing. She wound up being, I think, the villain. Anyway, she was a little guarded because of her background and because she was earmarked for stardom, which did not happen. And after all of that, but so she was the one who was not, well, she wasn't, we were all playing. I mean, we were having fun. Angelica and Ron Perlman, we were laughing. We were having a very good time. John Matuzak, the football player, he was in it,
Yep.
and he was heavily, he was a druggy guy. He was a drug guy. He was coked up and drove his car into a lamppost outside MGM, and but he was a lot of fun. We had a very good time. And Angelica was living with Jack, and Jack would come around and hang out. It was a fun shoot. We really did have a good time. And I got my neighbor Marsha Lewis to play the Frog Lady. She was Broadway. She was very Broadway, and I mean, it was the most fun. We had a ridiculous time doing it, and I think that shows actually in the movie. It has that spirit to it.
I've always wanted to ask, what led you all to creating the space herpes?
Well, we wanted an alien. We needed a villain alien monster, and we thought, let's just, you know, it's a joke. The movie is jokey, so why don't we make him kind of a jokey monster? I mean, and take everybody's worst nightmare and turn it into an alien creature.
The dinner
And,
scene's what
and you
gets
know, we
me.
knew we would get equal parts. Oh, that's hysterical, and equal parts. Ew. You know, we didn't want to turn people off, but of course, there's no accounting for the taste of some, and some people were going to take it literally or maybe, maybe it pushed some kind of awful button that they didn't want anybody to know about.
I remember my cousin when it first came out on VHS. He's like, "Bro, you got to watch this. You got to watch it." He goes, "It has herpes in it." I was like,
Herpes.
and we're like 8 or 9 years old. I'm like, "Why in the
Right.
hell is herpes?" And we started watching it. For the longest time, I thought herpes was this monster that hatches out of an egg and
Gonna come to
infects
you in the
people.
night.
So it was
Yeah.
like if you met somebody and they were like, "Yeah, well, that person's got herpes." I'm like, "Oh no,
Oh my God. The mission is in danger.
yeah,
We'll never get the ice to the planet in time.
we'll never find the seventh. What was it? The seventh planet or whatever."
Yeah, right. Seventh planet.
And then the time
That's
warp.
off of Peter Pan. Neverland, first star to the right. That was kind of a sly embedding of Peter Pan.
The time warp scene I always thought was great, and spoilers to whoever listens to this episode later. If you watch closely, a woman gets pregnant within the time warp. She goes through full term pregnancy. She has the baby, and you literally watch the baby grow up, and then the baby participates in the fight
That's true.
as an adult.
Absolutely. That's completely true.
And so many people just write that off like, I don't get it. I'm like, she was pregnant.
It's a
She went
time
full
warp.
term,
Lots of stuff
and
happens in a time warp. There's plenty of time in a time warp, but we just sped up the camera. That's all.
I just
That
always,
was economic necessity because they cut a week out of the production schedule, and then there was a power failure. Culver City, where MGM was, uh, went out while we were shooting, and we lost a night that we couldn't shoot anything. We lost it. It was well, we had no power, so it was a 24-hour thing. It never happened before and hasn't happened since. But so again, that was another reason we even had to cut within the time warp. They wouldn't let us shoot. The new guy would not let us go over this budget because he was new in the job and he didn't like the movie, and he didn't want to be responsible for what he assumed would be the failure of the movie. So he said, "Well, if the less it costs me, the better." So,
yeah, because
and then of
originally,
course he didn't last long on that job either. Yeah.
yeah, because originally you all had a $20 million budget, I think it was, and then all of a sudden the studio's like, "Oh, we're going to cut that back to 8."
Something like that. Yeah, it was pretty drastic. It was pretty drastic.
And that's what, let's see, $17 million difference. Or no, not 17,
I
12
have to
million,
go
12
back and
million.
I'm trying to remember what the actual numbers were, but yeah, it was considerable. I mean, well, because we were not on a very long shooting schedule to begin with, so every day counted, and every day was money.
So once you left there, you went and started working in music, right? Like doing music videos and stuff like with Barbara Streisand and different
No,
things, or
I didn't do. I was always writing television. I was writing a lot of. I was committing a lot of TV, and I was writing a lot of stuff. I wrote 15 scripts that got bought and paid for and never got made. Everything happened. Studios changed, stars died. Uh, I, Pauline Kael, who was a well-known film critic, said Hollywood is where you can be encouraged to death because they keep buying stuff, and I was living well, and I did pilots, stuff that didn't go anywhere. It didn't get picked up, but and I began to think maybe I'm just not no good, but I realized that that's not the case because I see what does get picked up, and it was no better. So I thought, well, it's the luck of the draw. So often it's just the luck of the draw, and uh, so I kept doing that, but I didn't do music video. I did a couple of videos for people. Videos were like conceptual because
yeah.
speaks. So I would be in the room and we would say, "We'll try this." I did David Bowie. I did "Never Let Me Go," uh, which was the hit off the album was "Let's Dance," which was a big dance hit for him. But "Never Let Me Go" was a very moody video. Jean Baptiste Mondino directed it, and Joe D'Alessandro was in it. We shot it, God, at the old Olympic boxing arena. It was like a dance marathon video. It was bizarre. I did a few years ago with Katy Perry. She wrote a birthday song, which I think she was hoping would like replace "Happy Birthday" or at least be up there with Stevie Wonder's birthday song, "Happy Birthday to You." It didn't take, but we did an elaborate video where she was a clown at different. She broke up different parties, different birthday parties. Didn't happen. So I've done a few of those and a couple of Bette's videos when Bette was doing videos, and but mostly I was writing comedy stuff. And I was writing for a lot of people, a lot of material. And after 20 years of that, two things happened. One was they made a movie about me called Get Bruce,
I was going
which
to reference that.
which Harvey Weinstein made, and he never laid a hand on me. Hashtag why not me? I don't know. I don't know. And at the same time, they offered me Hollywood Squares as a head writer, and I took the job. It was more of a comedy show than a game show, and then they Whoopi got the center square, and I've been writing for Whoopi with Whoopi for years. And she said, "I think you should host it." So they didn't want to piss her off early in the game, so they tested me. And I was like, "This is for the win, Louise." And they said, "Well, you're not exactly what we're looking for in a host, but we'll put you in the square next to her." And so suddenly I was in the square, and I was on television every night. And when you're on TV every night, you get all kinds of offers. And and so I was suddenly a famous person, and then I wound up doing Hairspray on Broadway and on the road for 2 years. So that was a whole different, opened up a whole different world. And performing my own one-man extravaganza, which I do now and again, and I'm just inching back into after COVID. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, there was a question that Morgan Wilburn was asking that he just asked. He said, "Were you on the Hollywood Squares back in the day?" And yeah, he answered it. He
I was
was.
back on in one day. Hollywood Squares has had 3.5 iterations. It started in 1967 and it was on for 14 years on NBC at daytime, and that ended. And I was doing Donnie and Marie with Paul Lind, who was a regular, and Paul by that time was a center square, and so I would write with Paul. We'd finish Donnie and Marie. We'd go over to Squares. He'd say, "Come with me to Squares. I haven't got shit." And we'd sit in the car and we would write. And then it came back in the '80s with Joan Rivers, and I wrote some stuff for her. And Wayland and Madam were on it, and Jim J. Bullock. And then it came back. Our version came back in the late '90s, and I was on that and the head writer. And now there's a hip hop version called Hip Hop Squares, which has been on, I think it's on MTV2, and it's all rappers because they're so funny. And it comes and goes. I'm not sure if they're still doing it or not, or but it's there. But so that yes, so I was on it back in several days. Yeah, absolutely, whole bunch of days.
Were you on it when Bobcat Goldthwait was on?
Yes, Bobcat was on frequently.
I know he was.
Whoopi loves him, and I love him too. He's great, but yeah, he was. He was a fabulous flavor. He wasn't on as much as Gilbert. Gilbert Gottfried was on.
Yeah.
He was kind of a regular. He and Brad Garrett and Caroline Ray were kind of like stalwarts. They were on almost all the shows. I mean, a combination of them. But Bobcat was on a lot of them as well.
I know. I was
Because,
reading.
when you get a person, you go to that square and you get that energy for a minute, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the show's all about. That was why Paul was such a star, because you come in, he'd do a joke, he'd go, and then you go to the next person. And that, the whole mix of that stuff is what made that show fun. So when somebody comes on and they have a real personality that explodes through the screen at you, you want to have them on.
Was it true that the showrunners themselves were always kind of on the edge of their seats because they were kind of scared of what maybe Gilbert and or Bobcat would probably say on the show? Because I know them two have no
I
filter.
think edge of their seats would be kind of an exaggeration. I mean, they knew what they were getting with them, and of course they knew. And those guys knew that they couldn't cross a certain line. Of course, the line moved in later years. I mean, the poor guy Gilbert, who was the sweetest guy on the planet, got dropped by Affleck for doing a joke about a tsunami joke, which was in bad taste. But when you have a corporate employer, they don't want to get any of it on them, and so it's easier for them to cut you loose than to defend you. So.
Yeah, and I know Bobcat even made a joke. He was like, when Gilbert got dropped, I was like, yes, now it's my chance,
Yeah, right.
Because he says that he always gets mistaken as Gilbert Gottfried, and he's like, "What?" He goes,
Well, that's what. Listen, at least he's gotten over Sam Kennison. They used to always mistake him for Sam because the three of them were like loud, angry guys. Except Gilbert, Gilbert was obviously fake anger. Bobcat was like a nervous breakdown. That was his character. And Sam was just, mad at the world. He was funny. He was funny, but he was out of control. And, it was not ended horribly, but he was, I don't know what would have happened. I mean, with all those guys, like you can't be angry forever. You have to kind of, mellow it somehow.
I have the portrait of Sam Kennison tattooed on my calf from his Rolling Stone cover in the 90s or late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, that's how much I liked Sam Kennison. And always hated it that him and Bobcat always had this long-standing beef with one another, and they never got to hash it out and clear it up before he passed.
That's true. Well, a lot of that I think had to do with they all come up. A lot of the people in that period came up the same way through the clubs, the Comedy Store, and the Laugh Factory, and the Improv, and there wasn't room for two guys who were doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a competition. There was also an element of that's my bit, you're doing my bit, and I think that was part of it. I'm guessing either that or they both were humping the same waitress. I don't know. That happened at the Comedy Store a lot as well.
Yeah, I know. I one of my past guests on here was what's his name? Mark Scheffler from Last House on the Left, and he
Yeah,
cut his teeth at the Comedy Store, and he would
yeah,
tell me
right.
he was telling me all sorts of stories about it. So
Yeah.
you go,
It's it's not for sissies.
no, especially stand up comedy, you got to have thick
Yeah, I mean
skin.
it's kind of as familial and friendly as it is. It's also cutthroat in a certain way, except that when I don't know. It's when you've made it, I of course think you have more security, but in fact, sometimes you have less. It's hard to say, but it's not it's not the fraternity that they would have you believe it is. It is and it isn't. What can I tell
You later
you?
went on and started doing the Academy Awards, correct? And
Yes, that became well. Variety television died, and because of cable, basically, and also because of SNL, which was on late at night and broke so much ground that you turned into something at 9 o'clock, and it seemed square because they couldn't do what SNL was doing at 11:30, 10:30 Central. So as a result, variety just kind of dribbled away. And also, there weren't people coming up in the business who were skilled in being the host, the compere of a show like that. So people, learned you could do one thing really well and make millions of dollars. You could be Madonna and you could sing and dance and never have to speak, and be the biggest thing in the world. So, and that would be on HBO, which would show your stuff uncensored. You wouldn't have to deal with the guy from Kraft Cheese telling you that your cleavage was too showy. And so variety TV went away, and it was replaced by specials and by lots of award shows and tributes and stuff like that. Because when you consider what it costs to do a sitcom, when you consider that by the end of Friends or Big Bang, it cost them like $6 million to turn the lights on, and that was just everybody's salary. The six principals were each making $1 million a show, so it's $6 million a show. So for that kind of money, you can fill a theater with famous people and give out an award, and get much more bang for your buck. And so those things proliferated. When I started, the Oscars were it. Basically, it was the EGOTs. It was the Oscars, the Grammys, the Tonys, which always had a larger audience, but never like the Oscars or the Grammys or the Emmys. And now they've proliferated to everything else. I mean, I did the first People's Choice Awards, and then I did the first MTV Awards, and I mean, it just grew like some fabulous cancer.
I
Melanoma.
mi-
There it is. What a
I
drag
miss
name. Melanoma.
I miss the way. I guess it's. I know MTV still has their Video Music Awards, but I
Yeah.
miss the way it used to be. It just seems way more grandiose and more important back at a certain point in time.
Well, I mean, reality television has taken over everything. And I mean, they cheer a Kardashian the way they cheer a music star. And then the Kardashians marry music stars. So it's all, and have children who become, I don't, we'll wait to see what they become. But they some of them are already music stars, and it's just and the music changed. It became much more hip hoppy and urban, and to my mind less interesting. But I'm not of that generation that grew up with it. So I mean, I'm the generation that started rock and roll, and like everything else, when you're a teenager, it's an act of rebellion. You know, there
Yeah.
was serious music. Broadway was serious music, and then rock and roll was frivolous music. And we're talking the pop vein. Obviously, we're not talking about Mozart. But and now, you know, Kanye is I mean, these are symbols of rebellion. You know, these people, you know, and because they appeal to that your audience, which is looking for rebellious figures to rally behind. Because and the weird thing is, their parents, you know, who rallied behind Joni Mitchell, are kind of going, well, yeah, I get it, but I don't really get it. But there you go.
Yeah, and probably your symbols of rebellion and mine, because I'm kind of like an old soul, was like the Who and AC/DC
Yeah, right.
and, you know, Black Sabbath and everything. It's like, oh, I'm listening to them. I'm totally hardcore and I'm against the system, you know? And now you
Yeah.
look at it and it's like, it's kind of tame compared to a lot of the stuff now. I
Yeah.
remember my grandparents used to get like super mad. They'd be like, don't be listening to that devil music. I'm like, he didn't reference the devil in any of the songs.
You know, it's like that used to be, that was a thinly veiled reference to black music. You know, that it was jazz and rhythm and blues, and that was, you know, devil music or satanic or any, you know, thing like that. It was code for, this is for black people. You're a white person. So, and then that changed as it went along, and you know, there was nothing.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
thankfully.
there were great white jazz artists and great white R&B artists, and it's all now it's all one. It's all a melange of things. And you look at the Grammys, and they have like 84 categories, including Hawaiian music. That's a category.
Well, I mean, I'm glad.
I mean, I'm always shocked to discover that there is new Hawaiian music, because
I,
you know, every time I go, I hear the same old favorites.
I was
And you
going
know,
to say,
Bet, who grew up in Honolulu, knows them all, and she knows all those people. And and you know, she we go places, and they start doing, and she requests things, and they all kind of look, and they go, "You know that?" Because it's like, it's arcanic, you know, Hawaiian music. It's from the archives. It's like, wow. So I'm always amazed if there's, you know, somebody's writing anything new in that vein. I shouldn't be surprised, because people write, you know. So there's going to be stuff, but it always, you know, oh, it's Hawaiian, it's slack guitar, and you know what it's going to be.
but
Anyway.
my God, some of these singers over here, especially a lot of people might not know
Oh,
is
yeah. Well,
he sang Over the
Over
Rainbow,
the
and
Rainbow, the famous Over
my
the Rainbow.
God, he had such a beautiful voice.
Oh yeah, it was gorgeous. He was, yeah, he was absolutely beautiful.
I mean, I could literally listen to him sing forever, and sadly, he's no longer with us. But he left a big he.
And you know, the funny thing is, and I know people who actually who do Over the Rainbow like is, because they think that's how Over the Rainbow was written. And I have to remind them to look at The Wizard of Oz, because this is how it was really written. And as a gay person, of course, I'm offended to my soul that they've forgotten who Judy Garland is, but because, you know, she's on the Temple Mount of gayness. But I just love that that's kind of replaced it, and they actually think that, you know. And
Well,
it's
to be fair, I have always looked at Judy Garland. I know she's like long past and everything, but I was like, oh God, she was so unbelievably gorgeous, just beautiful.
yeah, she was she really was beautiful. I mean, yeah.
But my Lord, didn't she have? She didn't get treated very well, guys, in her days in Hollywood. That's for sure. She got
She was,
run.
yeah, at the factory where we shot the Ice Pirates, MGM. She worked at the factory.
Yeah. So doing the Academy Awards, how stressful was that? I imagine that's got to be just.
Well, I say, for the kind of thing that I do, it's like if I were a football player, it's like the Super Bowl. You don't want to fumble in the Super Bowl. It'll live with you forever. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to screw up on the Oscars because it lives with you forever. Did you hear me, Will Smith?
I was going to say,
Yeah,
I didn't want to bring it up, but
ear out. This does not go away. I mean, 30 years after Sally Field said, "You like me, you really like me," she managed to monetize it with a Visa commercial making fun of herself. So that stuff doesn't go away. So, of course, there is a pressure knowing that that's the case. There's also a pressure knowing that you're live all over the world. And those instances are fewer and fewer. They're basically big sporting events and news. And in the variety, in the show business world, they are things like that are actually done that way. So yeah, so there's pressure, but it's somebody said to me, "This is television the way God meant it to be, live and in your face, and you have to be fast on your feet and all that." So there's also that. I think the imp of the perverse takes over, and you realize that it's in the universe's hands now, and uh, let's hope that we did enough preparation and that we're not too sleepy to be able to jump on something that happens and make a moment out of it.
yeah, I still can't believe this past Academy Awards. Just when I was watching it, I was like, did I just see what I think I
Well,
seen?
nobody. I mean, it was all, there's something wrong with that. Something wrong with that boy.
I
There's
thought it
something,
was
I mean, he's a
scripted.
lovely man. I've known him for years. I was stunned of all people. Who knew that he had such rage? I mean, I guess I haven't read the book, so I didn't know anything, and I didn't know about her alopecia. I mean, you know, unaware of these things, but and I don't watch the Red Table because I don't care, basically. But um, it was the most unlikely. I mean, if you had written this, they would have said, "No, this couldn't happen." Not Mr. Nice Guy. What's going to happen next? Tom Hanks is going to come out and knee somebody in the balls. What else can happen?
Yeah, that's like if you look back at Ricky Gervais from 2 years ago,
Well,
somebody just walking up on stage and uppercutting him for what he said. But
well,
I mean,
he never did the Oscars, but he did the Golden Globes.
yeah, the Golden Globes when he did
Of,
that.
of tainted memory. But yeah, I mean, but he's a controversial character. Will Smith, no. So that was kind of a shocker, and then everything that happened afterwards was kind of uh, just diminishing returns.
Yeah, because when I look back at the joke, I'm like, it wasn't that bad. It was really a tame joke. He didn't.
I know that. I mean, look, it doesn't matter what he said. Violence is never the answer.
No.
That being acknowledged, it wasn't even a good joke. It was the kind of joke. Let it go. I mean, that you can't even get exercise. It just was a bad joke, but um, it triggered something, and she
Yeah, that
didn't stop him.
yeah that Philly came out real quick.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and part of me, I was like you. I was like, Will needs to really maybe get some help because he's got some deep
I
seated
think he has
anger built
I
up.
think there's some anger management problems there.
And I've
And
watched
then
the Red
later on, he
Table.
was dancing and carrying on like it hadn't happened. So
Well, I hated it for him because he deserved that award. Hands
yeah,
down deserved that award, and I
yeah, he's
hated
really
that it
good.
got that way. But uh I don't know. I know Chris Rock kind of benefited from it because he had I think from what I read, he was selling tickets to his stand up for like $100 a pop, and then after that happened, it was $1,000 a pop. It was like,
Yeah, but because they wanted him to talk about it, but he won't talk about it. So uh, I, I'm sure they had a good time, but they didn't get their money's worth
and
because
good for him because he
good
don't
for
need
him.
to.
But, I mean, he's taken the high road from the moment he got hit. I mean, he said, don't throw him out. He didn't say that. They didn't ask him, but he was he took the high road all along. He said he wasn't going to press charges, and he hasn't talked about it. And eventually he will, but and I'm sure he'll make money whenever he talks about it. But that's the way it is. We're a capitalist society.
Write a book called Will Smith just slapped the shit out of
That's
me.
right.
Chris
Exactly.
Rock story.
Me who got slapped.
I bet you're glad that you weren't writing for that particular show after that event. I'm pretty sure you were like, thank
No,
God.
I would love to have been there just to be a part of the merry dance. I've been a part of a lot of other shit that's gone on at the Oscar show, so it would have just been one more embroilment.
So what are you working on currently now, Bruce?
I am. Well, I we came up with an idea for a musical, a small musical, 2 people and 5 musicians, and we got a grant from a theater in Florida, of a PPP, a payroll protection plan COVID grant, and we wrote it. And it's about a guy who's a gay 40-year-old would-be comedian who's working as in a comedy club in New York, and COVID hits, the club closes, his relationship breaks up, and he goes to quarantine in the attic of his parents' home in Longview, Texas, where he has an intimate relationship with his imaginary friend, Dolly Parton. So it's the guy and Dolly and the 5 musicians doing voices of other people. And it's all Dolly songs, or a whole catalog of songs. And we did it. We did a Zoom. They loved it. And I had to go to Dolly and get the rights, which I thought she would never give because, she's got her brand and she loved it. And she's now our partner. And we are going to premiere it in Wilmington, Delaware, September 17th at the Delaware Theater Center, and then do it in Fort Worth, Pittsburgh, and Nashville, where Dolly will, of course, make an appearance. I mean, she's not in the show; somebody plays her, and but she'll, unveil it with all the suitable bells and whistles. But you heard it here. Come to Wilmington. Tell us what you think. It's called "Here You Come Again," because, of course, I hear that's the song she sings, and she keeps coming back to him. It's all in his mind, you know. She's, but she keeps coming back. Here you come again. So that's
She's
what I'm
such
doing right now. I mean, we're doing a stage reading of it next week on Friday in Sarasota, Florida.
she's such a class act, Dolly Parton. I mean, you
She's
look at
amazing.
her
I
career.
said to her, I'm amazed you have time for this between curing cancer and staging a moon landing. I mean, what hasn't she done? She's on the
And she's never
bestseller list now. Wrote a book
and
with
and
him,
there's
with James Patterson.
never been dirt on her. They have never had any dirt on her that I know of. Nothing that's really been,
Nothing,
harmful to
nothing
her.
that can stick.
Yeah, because it's like she's been immaculate her whole career. She's done everything the right way.
That she has. I mean, I'm trying to think of something, but no.
She was every young boy's crush, I'm pretty sure, back in the 70s and 80s.
Well, yeah, and in the show we play her as like Dolly 1978 because he has his old poster hanging on the bedroom wall, which is from an old album, and she emerges from that. So it's not like Dolly today. It's like Dolly back then when she was more girlish and a little bit less rhinestoned.
Oh me, I love old Dolly Parton. My father is big into music and different things, and well, he's been working in studios and stuff for the better
Hmm.
part of 50 years. So he's gotten to meet like Ricky Skaggs and different people like that over the years, but he never got to meet Dolly Parton. But you'd always hear just how much of a class act she was. She was always willing to help other musicians when they needed it. She was always willing to
That's
lend
true.
a hand to whatever, and never had an ego about it.
That is true of her. She does good work. I mean, she has a great sense of social responsibility. No question about it.
So
So
you were pleasantly surprised when you went down there
I was
to
stunned. I mean, I worked on her television show in the '80s, which was not a success. I was brought in to help bolster it up, but it was doomed. It was one of those kind of. Yeah, she was not Carol Burnett, and as I said back then, there weren't people. She was not that kind of a. She's too special, and anybody you put anybody next to her, and they look, I mean, because she's like a cartoonish personality. I mean, she's not. she is a character, and it's difficult to put anybody to put her in other characters. And when anything she's done in the movies has been the Dolly character, toned down or pumped up or one thing or the other. But I mean, she is who she is, but she's great. But it made it difficult for her to host that kind of a show because she couldn't do like sketches. They all had to be in her world, in the Dolly world. So it was difficult. And the audience, she had also gotten very glamorous, and the audience didn't buy that. They wanted her to be a little bit more rough edge country kind of than
Yeah,
she had. And the ratings, there were huge tune in at the beginning, and then it began descending rapidly. So we turned it into a series of specials. Dolly goes to London, Dolly on Broadway, Dolly at the opera, and we opened Dollywood actually on that show during that series. Anyway, do other people have questions? Because I have to go in a few minutes. Are there anybody
no, I was
out
just
there
getting ready
live
to say,
listening?
I was just getting ready to say, it was
Oh,
a pleasure and an honor to meet you.
thank you so
And,
much.
and I would
Well,
love to have you back on again sometime to talk more.
I would be happy to do that.
Bruce,
Of
it has
course.
been a total honor and a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Take care.
Your work has been a lot of it has been my childhood. You
Yeah,
were
I know.
responsible for a lot of my childhood.
Yes, I know.
But,
Yeah. Time for my nap. All right.
you're still young at heart, my friend. You're still young at heart.
Oh, good. Thank you. And thank everybody out there. Aloha, ladies and gentlemen, and those who have yet to decide. A line from Kinky Boots. Arbitrary.
Well, Bruce, it has been,
All
like I
right.
said before, honor and a pleasure. Doors always open. And thank you for taking your time today to be on.
All right. Enjoy. Bye, everybody.
Later. Well, everybody, that was Mr. Bruce Vilanch. He has quite an extensive IMDb. I mean, the writing credits this fella has is immense. It really is. I am so happy to have gotten to talk to him because he's responsible for two of my guilty pleasures. I love Ice Pirates and the Star Wars Holiday Special. I didn't get the Star Wars Holiday Special until like much later in life. Like I said, I think it was around 2013 that I actually got to first see it. But Ice Pirates, from the first time it came out on VHS, I was there and couldn't wait to watch it because I was so into sci-fi and all that nerd shit. And anything that resembled Star Trek and Star Wars, I was down. And Ice Pirates was all of that, but with that comedy twist. And yes, I did think that the space herpes was really what herpes was, and it was fucking terrifying. I hope you guys enjoyed the new intro and the new background, the new show artwork. There's a reason for that. Things are going to change with the show, and it's going to be better. Going to try to do more and more varied content because I know on YouTube a lot of times it can be rather time consuming and or monotonous to sit through a 2-hour interview when most people come to YouTube for 10 or 15 minute videos. They want to watch something real quick, get the information and move on. And I understand that now. Before it was like, well, I'm doing, I'm going to put all these interviews out there, and I get some people don't have that kind of time, and it's understandable. So there's going to be more varied content, a little bit of something on there for everyone that's a nerd, mainly horror, film stuff, reviews, retrospectives, different things. And even the podcast that me and my father are going to do, probably even do like obscure albums from past artists that you may not have heard of and may have. But I will say next weekend, damn, shook the whole table. No, it's not an earthquake, just me. I bumped the table. Next weekend is the launch of mine and my father's podcast, the J&J Music Show, and we'll have Steve Miller Band's Kenny Lee Lewis. He's the bass player for Steve Miller Band. We will have him on the show as our first guest. and we will be off to the races from there. What else am I forgetting? Oh, so back to why some things have changed. So I am now flying solo. I am in the driver's seat and really don't have a co-pilot right now. I might do a revolving door of guest host as time, for a while, and I might settle on a permanent co-host at some point. But Luke had to step away, and I love you, buddy, and thank you for everything you did and all the fun we had, and the door is always open to Luke whenever he wants to come back and do all the wild and zany shit that me and him are known for. And he's been my brother for 8 years. I've been on this island, and Luke's been my closest friend. He needed to concentrate more on his family. He has a daughter who has cerebral palsy, and he also has a little boy. And then he also has his own business to run, and trying to commit fully to doing a podcast, which right now we don't make money on this. It's, we have a merch store, and yeah, we make a little bit here and there from a t-shirt, but we do this mainly for the love of it and the fun of it, first and foremost. So Luke needs to concentrate on what puts the roof over his head and the food on the table and taking care of his family. And I have no hard feelings. If anything, I wish him well, and I'll still see him all the time. And hopefully every now and then I can get him back on and do stuff, maybe here and there. And then Mandy, I know a lot of you notice her absence, and I'm going to address that. Mandy has gotten opportunities, and opportunities to help her with a future in working in film and other things. And I want her to concentrate on that and, follow her dreams and make her dreams a reality and better herself. So with that said, I am, flying solo. That's fine. I can handle it. I can do this. It's not that big a deal. I've gotten used to talking to a computer screen and pretending there's a bunch of y'all there, because when you watch all that good shit, used to, I was very shy about it. Like, I got to have somebody to talk to because I don't know who the hell I'm talking to. But, yeah, so Behind the Fiends is changing a little bit. There's going to be some tweaks in the logo, different things. The audio version of the show. The audio version of the show, the original, the OG, is going to be archived on May 17th. So if you haven't listened to any of those original 138 episodes, you go do it now if you wouldn't mind. I mean, if you don't, that's fine too. But they're going to be archived. I might do like a limited release here and there, maybe to YouTube or to Spotify, iTunes, all the platforms that the show's on. But yeah, we're changing providers, or I'm changing providers. I'm going to a different provider. And I'm shutting down the original show, archiving all the episodes. Now, the original interviews that I've had with different people, they will be transferred over to the new platform. The other shows that were mainly like, me and Luke and different stuff will be archived and maybe released here and there just on a limited time basis. So, that's all my house cleaning. So, Morgan, just wanted to say you're in our thoughts and prayers, buddy, and you and your family. Sorry about the loss of your brother. Much love and care and strength to all of you. I know that's got to be hard. Luckily, I still got my brothers, but I've lost, my mother and others in my family that I was close to. So I know how much that sucks. And there's really no words that you could put to that kind of hurt. There really isn't. But just know you're in my thoughts and prayers, my friend. Anytime you need anything, you know where to find me on the social media or messages or emails or whatever. But guys, I'm going to get out of here and stick around. There's new stuff coming down the pipe. Things are changing, but we ain't going nowhere. So without any further ado, I bid you all a farewell, a good afternoon, and a good night wherever you are out there in Videoland. This has been your old buddy John, and we'll see you again next time on